Thank you for watching Rider Nation Station's presentation of Third and Long, brought to you by these following fine sponsors: Buffalo Wild Wings, Miller's Funeral Home, Eagles Lodge 767, Rabel's Auto Service, Plus One Professionals, All Glaze Equipment Rental, Midway Trailers, American Legion Post 323, Albert Sporting Goods, Family Audiology, Speckman Automotive, Kogi Plumbing and Heating, Spees Chiropractic, Varsity Lanes, Minster Bank, VFW Post 9289, and Gwinneri Pizzeria.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this edition of Third and Long on Rider Nation Station. I'm your host, Joe Hurlburt, and joining me as they do each and every week, and added a new one, Roger Duncan, Greg Freewalt, Denny Long, and Don Martindale, and many people know him as Cork, correct? All right. Well, what we're going to do this week, as we have done in weeks past, we're going to talk about this week's Roughrider opponent. That'll be the Kenton Wildcats. And, of course, coaches, when we go back, way back to the day, you know, there's a lot of stories that can be told about the Kenton Wildcats. One instance that I remember, and maybe you're familiar with it, Greg, you've probably even played at that point in time, was the incident with Dave Liette. Do you remember that incident? Was it after you? Do you remember that? Can you recall that situation? You want to share that?
Yeah, I was in college at the time.
Okay.
But, from the stories I heard that he went to congratulate somebody and the kid took his helmet off and smashed Dave's hand and put Dave out of the season.
Right.
So, you know, that was not a real good play by them.
No, and it was always told to me that till the day that Dave passed away, God rest his soul, that he was still looking for that individual to make it right. But
that'd be the type of guy you wouldn't want looking after you either.
Exactly, you're absolutely right. Do you guys remember when Kenton actually came into the Western Buckeye League?
1942.
Seriously, it's that long? They've been in the Western Buckeye League that long?
Yeah, I think. The league was put together in 1936, but the charter members was in 1940, and I believe that was Bellefontaine, Bluffton, Van Wert, Salina, St. Mary's, and Walpuck. And then that was 1940. In 1942, Kenton joined the league.
Really? Absolutely. Do you remember any of their coaching staff?
From those years?
Not from those years. From like, gee whiz. No, from.
Wait a minute. Let me give the mic to Cork.
Oh, there you go. Cork will know. Cork's the oldest individual on our panel today. But anyhow, going back to days that you remember of Kenton when playing against them or coaching against them, I remember the Malk era, the Mike Malk era, and things of that nature.
That was the biggest one I remember with the Balk area. And other than that, I'm not real familiar with the coaches. Maybe Coach Long or Coach Duncan might be.
Any particular, Roger, do you remember any of the other coaches prior to that or after Malk left?
No, I really don't. Probably Cork's better. It seemed like the Malk area just highlighted everything, but I know there were some keels that maybe Coach Long and Coach Martindale can invite some information on. And Kenton was always a competitive place, but always a friendly place to us. We would go there and always enjoy seeing their coaching staff and even the Malk area coaching.
Okay, back in 1950, when I was on the Northern football team with Skip, there were a lot of Kenton people on the team since Kenton was pretty close to Ohio Northern. And then when I came to St. Mary's as Skip's assistant in 1959, there was a lot of the kids that went to Northern when we did were coaching at Kenton, George Keel and people like that. And so that's how a rivalry was really going strong then.
Well, I really don't like Kenton. The town, the name's all right. Simon Kenton was a pretty neat guy, but the rest of it, town players, water tower, don't like any of that. Judy said I wasn't allowed to say things like this, but I think I can. Joe said I can say anything I want.
Thanks a lot.
As long as I don't swear
There you go.
much, unless I get excited. No, and I just don't. For me, it's a kind of a personal thing. I just have never had good feelings about Kenton.
One of the things that is synonymous with Kenton's football program is their air attack. That's what they've been known for. So they throw the football, they threw it all over the place, and I guess one of the records that still stands is the most yardage through the air against the Roughrider defense, and that came in, I think, Blaine Houston's year, I think, if you remember him. I don't know how many yards he threw, 400, 500 yards through the air that particular time. But that's what Kenton has been noted for over the years, and can you attest to that?
Yeah, especially the Mock area.
Yeah.
If you go back to, Kenton's been up and down. In the 2000s, they've been pretty good. You go 2001, 2002, they won the state championship.
Right.
2003, they were runners-up. 2011, they were runners-up. In 2013 and 14, they were in the top four. And if you look at the two Mock boys that played, yes, they threw the ball over the place, and they also could have been running backs also.
Right, exactly.
I remember they had two great receivers. I can't remember them, but they were, one on one side, one on the other, and they passed all over. And Coach Vossler had a headache for 3 weeks prior to the game, I think, and he prayed for sleet. Well, about halfway there, lo and behold, it started raining and sleeting, and I don't think those guys caught maybe 2 or 3 passes for hardly any yardage at all. So we thought maybe Coach Vossler had some help up from upstairs. Kenton always had some great players, great linebackers at one time. It just seemed like every year or so they would have a real great linebacker and just would dominate if you allowed them. And we had to find ways that we could offensively take advantage of them. And they always ran at Michigan State with a slant. It was a 6-man front with a tilt tackle and a middle linebacker. And the middle linebacker, the first motion going into the line of scrimmage, he would just knock the hallelujah out of it. I mean, it'd just blow it up. And so we came up with the fullback dive. We would sacrifice our regular halfback, and he would run in there, and that linebacker would just clobber him. But we would hold the ball and then give it to the fullback coming in a little bit later, and he had a much clearer area because that middle linebacker was beating up on his buddy. And so, but we had to study him. I mean, because they did a good job of defending us, and we had to come up with some little innovative ideas on the offense to take advantage of them.
I think going along with Coach Duncan's story there and Coach Vossler worried about these two boys, I think those were the Vaughn boys. And I think they were either twins or brothers. And I do remember looking at the film on them. And at that time, Britton Crates was their quarterback, which had a great arm. And these Vaughn boys would come across that field with high speed, and he was hitting those. And I was just wondering how we were going to play against them that night. And that was 1990. And Coach Duncan's right. When we got up Airway, there was some sleet or snow coming across the field. And Kenton was rolling pretty big right at that time, and they were even talking about state championships. Mm-hmm. And as the game went on, the Crates was a great arm, wasn't as mobile as the Malk boys was at quarterback, but he would just back up, and he had a great offensive line in front of him, and he would throw that ball just about 2 steps back. Well, that night the game went on, and we won 19-0. And went on to win state championship that year also. But Britton Crates, somebody interviewed him later, and they said, what happened in that game? He would just take 1-2 steps backwards and fire that ball and hit one of them Vaughn boys. He said, every time I looked up, there was a Liat arm in my face.
Right. And I think Crates later went on and played at Michigan State, I thought. Yeah, then he went down to UD and finished up down there. So, yeah. Kenton has always had a history of great quarterbacks, great receivers, and to me, their passing attack was it was simple. It always seemed like they ran maybe a 3-yard in, you get it, and let the receiver do what he can get. And every now and then they'd throw long, but very simple, very, very simplified type of passing attack. Any other memories of Kenton, St. Mary's battles along the way?
Well, I do remember one. It was my last year of coaching, and we were in the last minute of play, and we were ahead. I think this was 2001, and we kicked off the ball to them. They got to like the 25-yard line, and they threw one up to about the 40, and time was running out, and they had a guy come downfield, went off to the left, another guy come out in the middle, and Mock dropped one right to him to beat us at the end of the game. And, I remember that one well, along with Coach Long's story. So the negativity. One thing I didn't swallow very well was when they were playing us on our field. It was right at the end of the game, very few seconds left in the game, and they had a player fake an entry to get a timeout. They didn't have any timeouts, and came back and threw a pass and beat us on that, and I wasn't real fond of that. The only other time I heard about was when one of their star players got kicked out of the game. In halftime, they switched jerseys and put his brother's jersey on him and played, and I think Slinus coach Jerry Harris went berserk over that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's crazy times. We're going to take a quick break. I want to remind everybody that tonight is the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, the Hall of Fame game with the Kenton Wildcats coming to Grand Lake Health Systems Field. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about one of those players that is being inducted in this year's Hall of Fame class. We're going to talk a little bit about Jeff Cisco when we come back right after this.
Thank you for watching Rider Nation Station's presentation of Third and Long, brought to you by these following fine sponsors: Buffalo Wild Wings, Miller's Funeral Home, Eagles Lodge 767, Rabel's Auto Service, Plus One Professionals, All Glaze Equipment Rental, Midway Trailers, American Legion Post 323, Albert Sporting Goods, Family Audiology, Speckman Automotive, Kogi Plumbing and Heating, Spees Chiropractic, Varsity Lanes, Minster Bank, VFW Post 9289, and Gwinneri Pizzeria.
All righty, we welcome you back to Third and Long. I'm Joe Hurlburt, and joined again with Roger Duncan, Greg Freewalt, Don Martindale, and Denny Long. And we talked a little bit about Kenton, tonight's opponent, but one of the things that is taking place tonight at Grand Lake Health System Field is the Hall of Fame game. One of the inductees tonight is Jeff Cisco. And when you talk about Roughrider football and you talk about Roughrider running backs, and we've had a plethora of great running backs, Jeff Cisco's name is always near the top. Anything that you can recollect in coaching Jeff Cisco and the way he played the game of football here at St. Mary's?
My impression of Jeff was that he was a fierce competitor. He thought he was going to score every time he touched the ball. And if he didn't, he was really disappointed. I mean, a 10-yard gain, that was a real disappointment. He was thinking in his mind, I'm sure, how could I have broken one more tackle? Another thing that always impressed me, if we'd throw a pass to him, like a little pass over the middle, he was really dangerous then because you had backs come up and they weren't a match for him. So, fierce competitor, great football player.
Yeah, you wonder how many points he would have scored if he would have played more in the second half. Because he hardly ever played in the second half. Because the football team was great then, but it was always far ahead. They put everybody else in.
I remember a fan saying one time, just jokingly, wonder if Jeff was going to get a letter or not playing enough quarters. But probably, and I'd mentioned this before, probably the greatest run I ever saw was against Walpuckinetta, and Jeff ran something like a 6 slant, was hit through the hole, bounced around through there, was hit by the linebacker, defensive lineman, went up the sideline, was hit by every defensive back, and scored. And it was just like Coach Long said, every time he touched that football, he felt he was going to score. He had that type of determination. And I know Coach Duncan, Coach Foster said the same play. They saw him coming up the sideline, and one of the defensive backs went to hit him, and he just jammed him with an arm and blew him right off and right on down the sideline.
I think the key word, like Coach Long said, was fierce. If he wanted to touch the ball, and he was going to make you pay for him having the ball. And it was just a tremendous determination. You would look at the look in his eyes, and you thought, if you were in a fight with this guy, you would have to kill him. I mean, it was just that fierce. And the great run that we've all talked about here was against Wapak. That was just a prime example, was that he just looked at those people and thought, yeah, no kidding, and just smashed them into the ground. And one other time I remember, at that time we scrimmaged Shawnee, and somebody got a helmet on his knee, and it hurt a little bit, and so he went back and was sitting on the ground and kind of rubbed it a little bit, and he told Coach Bachman 3 plays. And so he did. He hopped up, and I looked at him, and he winked at me. And, of course, what that meant basically when Coach Bachman gave him the ball next, he just tore him up. I mean, he just ripped down through there for them bruising his knee a little bit. But fierce, a great competitor, and just a fine young man. Yeah, I just loved the look in his eye when he got the ball.
What kind of work ethic did he have?
Well,
I mean, a lot of it, he had a lot of natural ability. He come from good stock. His dad, Galen, obviously played here at St. Mary's, later at Ohio State, and so on and so forth. But what kind of work ethic did he have?
Well, I have no complaints about that, and I know Coach Bachman would take the backs and make them hit the sleds. And of course, as Coach Long and I over there with the linemen, that was our favorite day. The backs driving sleds, and so they, it wasn't all, we always thought prima donna stuff. All he did was run the ball and hand off, and they didn't have to do any of that work stuff. But I don't think there was any complaint about his work ethic and with his talent. You could have all the talent in the world, but if you were lazy and not in shape and didn't want to compete, your talent would not show through the way his did.
Probably one of the things I remember about Jeff was when Skip would be running plays in practice and things weren't going well or something, Skip would go into a rage. And Jeff would, you didn't bother Skip at that point, except for Jeff. Jeff said, "We're going to be okay, Coach."
Any other, Coach Long?
You're talking about natural talent and so on, and that's all true, except he isn't very big. I mean, compared with other Mr. Football Ohio's, he's very small. But he overcame that with the fierceness.
Any other final thoughts as far as today's program? Anything more about Kenton or Jeff? I stumped them. Yes. They're speechless.
We've all spoken out.
Don't like him.
So tell us how you really feel, Coach. Well, again, we want to thank you guys for joining me here with Third and Long. And I tell you what, we're getting a lot of positive feedback. So I think a lot of people like to hear the tradition, the history of Roughrider football. And today we brought another insight. We went back into the 50s to bring you a little bit about Kenton Wildcats and Coach Martindale's tenure here as part of the coaching staff back in the day. So we want to thank you guys once again. That's going to do it for this edition of Third and Long on Rider Nation Station. Once again, coming up shortly is the Hall of Fame game between the St. Mary's Roughriders and the Kenton Wildcats. We'll be there to bring you all the play-by-play action. Until next week, we'll see you then. So long, everyone.
Thank you for watching Rider Nation Station's presentation of Third and Long, brought to you by these following fine sponsors: Buffalo Wild Wings, Miller's Funeral Home, Eagles Lodge 767, Rabel's Auto Service, Plus One Professionals, All Glaze Equipment Rental, Midway Trailers, American Legion Post 323, Albert Sporting Goods, Family Audiology, Speckman Automotive, Kogi Plumbing and Heating, Spees Chiropractic, Varsity Lanes, Minster Bank, VFW Post 9289, and Gwinneri Pizzeria. Thanks for watching another episode of Rider Nation Station. Help us help you by subscribing on YouTube or following us on Facebook.